I'm doing called the Brownsville Renaissance Project, which is to institute a kind of physical representation of the faith that I have tried to live my life by, not always in the same understanding. But you know, there's an interesting thing, Susan, you know, as a seminary, we have to learn certain phrases. Mine is, well, it's not mine, but St. Anselm said, fides quedens intellectus, faith seeking understanding. And for an artist, or somebody like me, an educator in the past, and perhaps representing something, the way that I understand ultimate reality, or God, is through this ephemeral thing we call the arts. And like great philosophers and theologians, I believe that God is represented in beauty, and that beauty represents God, and that the two should be always in communication. And for me, that is going to be represented not just in terms of the art of acting and dance, theater, music, but in the construction of the building itself. And so that is where the two things come in. So you asked about the church, the seminary coming from the word meaning a seed, church coming from the thing that the seed grows into, and then this craft of ours, or the stage. I didn't ever intend just to do this, that is to be an actor or anything like that. I always thought I would go back to the seminary. I always thought that I would go back and take my orders, or at least I had held out this hope that this might happen. And it just so happens, I don't want to put her on the spot, but tonight in this room is my dear friend, the first person that really, it's like you could do this as a profession. And there's a place in Northwestern where I'm applying, and maybe you should just check it out. And her name is Anita Blanchard Nesbitt. She's right here. You should come and check out my question. And you know, Susan, this is the fact is that we didn't have a car. I couldn't get up. You know, it would have taken 2.5 hours, you know, on public transportation, which was normally how I got to and from there, certainly thereafter. But you know, I got there and I thought that there was a possibility. I saw something. I saw a way. That yes, the idea of being a priest came to me because of this. And I didn't grow up with a father. He died before I was 2. I never knew him. It's not sad. You don't have to feel bad for me because I don't have any personal remembrance of him. But what I loved about the priests is that they were able to be fathers to many people. We called them father. You know, they walked around in this clerical collar. They keep on them a belt at all times. You know, to remind you never see it. You never even see it. The MS that they put on before service. So you never see these things, but they're in prayer all day. And what I loved about that is that you could be a father to many people. But then I saw that there was a way as an actor where you could represent as the embodiment of something, of a character, of a figure, of a dramatist persona, that you could take on the representation for and of a people, and that perhaps I could be most utilitarian in that sense. And so I do think of this as a service. I certainly, you know, derive very little pleasure out of being, you know, on parade, you know, for hire, 8 times a week, or you know, 5 days a week, depending on the show you're on. But it is a sacred duty to me, and it's certainly not about me in this sense, even though actors are, including myself, are terribly self-concerned. But it's the great irony of having to be self-concerned to be selfless. You see what I mean? That is, if I'm not an attractive actor, if I'm not a valuable actor, if I don't bring something, people don't want to see me, if I bore them, if I am not fascinating, if I don't keep myself in a certain degree of being, you know, wanted or look, you know, to be watchable, then I'm in trouble. So I have to, in order to serve the greater good, which I think really is to represent whatever it is that people think I represent. My mother's name is Lillian, and my mentor's name, the lady I worked for at Bass Elementary School, now in Magnet School, just across the street from Ogden Park. Her name is Marcella or Marcy Gillen. And you know, a couple of years ago now, I had this idea about a museum for creating a kind of archive of all of the or a kind of national center where Black performance culture could live. And I was going to call it AMPA, and I do call it that, African American Museum for the Performing Arts. And for many reasons, it didn't take. You know, I went around trying to raise money for it from 2007. And then a lady by the name of Teron Patton, who at the time was the executive director of Congo Square, she's here tonight, as is the current executive director, Charlique Roll, and Erica Daniels, the architect. Erica Ratcliffe was the artistic director of Congo Square, 25 years now, I think. Magnificent feat, but without a home. And it struck me, it began to seem to be the case that there's not very many places where people could go in their own neighborhood to consume the content that they had created from there. I do a TED talk about it recently at Wrigleyville, TEDx Wrigleyville, that I call critical spatial theory. And that if a space could be created, kind of like that movie Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. And it had been built. It had been built. It had done a beautiful job. Chuck remembers, you know, the Chicago Theater Company, of course, and Goodman, these wonderful theaters. And during the blight of 80s and 90s and unfunding things, I lost my job in the Chicago Public Schools because they cut music programming. How do you take the life out of school? How do you take play and a sense of joy? These are very well-known things. Philosophers have talked about them for years, the realm of joy and play. And to rob that is to rob the lifeblood of the Black community. And so put it back, but put it back better. And learn from the people who have been doing this successfully. The arts and education program that the Goodman has been doing for a long time. Steppenwolf does wonderful work in this. These institutions that have been around, but why not where we need it? Why do the people have to come here and not their own backyard? Like they can do anywhere else. To this day, Susan, I think there are maybe 7, maybe 8 brick and mortar professional Black theater companies in the country. In Chicago, there's not more than 4 or 5. A paltry percentage is not because it doesn't work, it's just because it hasn't been given what it needs, the resource of this space and the resource. And the problem has been that we weren't thinking big enough. And so when Teron came with this idea of building this tiny little place where, you know, she didn't say tiny little, she said, we want a home. And I thought about the great work that Jackie Taylor has done up on the north side of Chicago. God bless her. In bringing the joy to other places, which is important, but it says in my Bible, the charity begins at home. And so we have to, that's love, and we can represent that love as ephemeral a thing as that. And building a space and showing it and manifesting it. This is the very great beauty, for example, Susan, if we're going to get all theological about it again, if I may, doing the Blessed Sacrament, representing the incarnation in the flesh of this bread. It's transubstantiated. It becomes the body, which represents the whole. It's quite, yes, it is that other quote, Deus fit homo, ut homo fieri Deus. God made man, or God became man, that man might become God. And so this is what it is, so that we might have a manifestation of that divine spirit that is the collective, only original contribution in the performing arts to these United States is what Black people created from nothing. In August Wilson's play, I talk about this in my TED Talk, Aunt Esther talks about a city of bones that was made in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And the bones of people who died on the slave trade took their bones and created a city for themselves. And so that's what this is, to take something from nothing. The resurrected corpse, just like St. Peter's Basilica, built over the bones of St. Peter, a first century man. You can go and see him today, is the Vatican. And so this is my way of saying that that's worthy of a collective space. And that's what the plan is for the Lillian Mercy. I think you stifle expression, and that's choked. You know, it's very interesting. Julie Taymor, my dear friend, the great director, talks about if you try to stifle nature, it will still grow, but it will grow in a warped way. For example, you put a block on a city street, and weeds will grow around it, but eventually it'll become crooked. And that's what it is. These people expressing themselves through violence and destruction, through self-mutilation in some ways, self-sabotage, in the inner city streets and elsewhere. It's because they don't have another means to express themselves. They don't, nor they've been taught the tools, even when they recognize it, to know. You know, the very word education, it comes from educare, to bring forth, to pull out, to draw out of something. And so that's really, I think, what the theater at its best is doing, is pulling out the inner man or woman by representation, by mimesis, by recognition that that person up there is saying something or doing something or being someone, and therefore expressing me, even if I do not have the language. That's the greatness of this literature, of the theater, is that those people on stage say it better than we can say it. They do it better than we can do it, but that's what we were thinking. And that's what we were feeling. And when we don't have that, then I think we rob the generation of hope itself. You know, they keep getting biblical. It says there are three great things: faith, hope, and love. And you know, the greatest of those is love. Hope is important too. It says it's a great thing. And the way that is expressed, the faith and the hope are expressed through love, through what we do. And that's what actors are. Acting is doing, acting is being. And so, you know what I mean? I wrote but I'm gonna stop talking about jazz and then, but I wrote a essay which will be published soon. It's called Activism. It's on activism. Actors who try to represent themselves as themselves in the cause of social justice. For example, the great Viola Davis recently apologized for having played the role in The Help. I didn't see it, but she apologized for it after having received awards from it, because she thought in that moment she was being socially just or speaking something. But we do our work by who we are on stage. My social justice activism isn't being an actor. If I didn't feel comfortable representing something on the stage or on the screen, it's fine. This is just me. Other actors have a completely different philosophy, and they're right. But if you have to apologize for your work, you should not be doing that work. And so that's what I say. Do your activism through this. This is where actors and artists wage battle. This is our theater of war, is the actual theater, which is theater of ideas, and therefore a theater of being and representation. Hope is like another way of saying optimism to me. And I get optimistic when I just see these people dripping with talent, pregnant with ability, and no place to put it out. No center where they, Congo Square is a wonderful idea. It comes from a place in Louisiana where the free people of color, before they were free, or not just free, were the slaves, the plantation workers, the enslaved persons on on Sundays could get together and express themselves. And they had any manner of performance and preaching. I mean, there was this magnificent place, the Place Congo, as it was originally. And just to think of the service that provides, of giving a suffocating man air, of giving a drowning girl a breath of fresh air, or a man dying of thirst, sweet water, I think is, I've seen it, where you walk into any church on Sunday, I swear to God, it doesn't matter what city you're in the United States of America, and there are some churches with really bad choirs. But that's rare. But on any given Sunday, you'll hear a sermon that breathes life back into the people. You'll see a play. It's like that is something I don't have to believe in or have faith in. I know. Do you know what I mean? The idea of faith is actually contains within it doubt. The idea of doubt contains within it a certain degree of faith. To doubt means it's a spectrum, really. To some extent, the church, the Catholic Church believes that there's a spectrum between good and evil, that it's not two separate things, but that evil is the absence of good. Dark is the absence of light, like cold is the absence of heat. And so if you just put some heat in it, if you just put some light on it, if you just breathe into this vacuum, the people will come alive. And if the people come alive, the nation will come alive. And if this nation can come alive again, so maybe can this world have peace. Finally, I honestly think, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, there's no better idea that I've heard for saving the planet than the Lillian Marcy Center. That's what I believe.